This is the IFES podcast. I'm Laura Osio. After decades of dictatorship, Guinea finally held its first democratic election in June 2010. Yet, despite the efforts of the interim government, the Electoral Commission, known as CENI for its acronym in French, and other stakeholders, a number of challenges and setbacks have delayed the runoff election. Elizabeth Cote, IFES Chief of Party in Guinea, speaks to us from Conakry about the latest developments in this matter. Before we dive into what's happening at the moment, would you please give us a quick overview of elections in Guinea?
Guinea basically had its first election. It was a referendum when the country decided to separate from France, if I can say. And this was in 1958, because Guinea was the first really francophone country to vote for independence. And then Sékou Touré, who was a labor union leader, took over. He was of a real sort of Marxist, hardcore Marxist school. And he basically ran Guinea with an iron hand until 1984 when he died. And during his time, there were several elections, but they were always to confirm his supremacy. And when Cote, who was a captain in the army at that time, took over at the death of Sékou Touré, basically there were no elections until 1991, when Guinea opened to multipartism, and there was a referendum on a constitution, and basically I would say it was the sort of first steps towards democracy at that time. But very quickly, the sort of same spirit or mentality of the one-party rule, continued, because basically it was the same people. And so the elections that took place between the first election was in 93, all the way to the last elections in 2005, were always run in a way to influence the vote, and they were, flawed elections basically that kept on keeping the same party in power. So this is really, in June was really the first free election.
How did the June elections go?
Well, the elections were quite good in the sense that they were peaceful elections, and we were all worried, all the stakeholders were worried on how the elections would go. There was 24 candidates, and so what was at stake was not as the stakes were not as high as, for instance, this runoff. But to come back to these elections in June, there were a lot of mishaps due to the fact that the Electoral Commission was not quite ready. There were major hurdles, and there were, for instance, the use of a new system of secured envelopes that arrived very late, even that arrived on election day, and people did not know how to use them, the poll workers. So poll workers not well trained, members of the commissions of centralization and tabulation of the results not well trained, and so this caused the annulment, the invalidation of several polling stations, and even entire regions were invalidated. So, but they were accepted because basically the two winners were the two main people that deserved to win. So that's how the results, even though they were a little bit forced, were accepted by everybody.
What has the CENI been doing to prepare for the runoff election?
There was a special committee that was set up by different stakeholders of the transition to try and really evaluate what needed to be improved. And there were 24 main points that came out of that, and most of which having to do with poll worker training, the commissions responsible for the centralization of the results also needed to be trained. There was also several voters that used a receipt to vote with because they had not received their electoral cards for different reasons. So a special set of cards were made for these voters because there had been a lot of abuse in the use of these receipts and falsification and so on. So another main issue was the access to polling stations. A lot of voters had to walk, 45 kilometers, 30 miles to get to their polling station. So all this redefining of polling stations per elector had to be done, and that was done as well.
I understand there have been some new developments with the runoff election. What is happening now?
Well, first of all, I should say that everything was paralyzed basically for almost a month with a huge leadership crisis at the head of the Election Commission. As you may know, the president of the Election Commission passed away, the former president, and there was a real fight for his replacement amongst the people of the CENI and even in general in the political class. The CENI was divided in half, one siding with one party and the other side with the other party who are contesting the second runoff. And finally, 2 days ago, the interim president of Guinea, head of the transition, General Conakry, decreed, and named a president of the CENI, and he decided that to use one of the experts that has been working with the CENI for several years now, who is a person coming from the International Organization of the Francophonie, General Siaka Sangare, and he is a Malian, and he has now been named at the head of the CENI. So as we speak, the CENI is now meeting with for the first time in weeks altogether with the new president, and they are evaluating the feasibility and at what date really the election can take place.
How has the population been taking all of this delay and uncertainty?
Well, the mood, as you may have followed earlier this week, there was really heavy demonstrating. There were again, people died. There was a lot of confrontation between youth groups of one of the parties and the police force. And since the president decreed solve this blockage at the election commission level, really, it's like the whole streets have become calm. There is a nationwide relief, and people are happy with this decision on all sides. So I think that even if the date was slipping a few days or a week or so, people are content and they feel that things are under control.